Hi, everyone. And first of all, thank you to the IPC for having me here today. As mentioned, I'm Beatrice Cannelli. I'm a PhD candidate at the School of Advanced Study at the University of London. And in today's presentation titled Mapping Social Media Archiving Initiatives, Current Trends and Future Perspectives, I would like to talk about some of the considerations emerged from the analysis of data that I collected through an online survey that was conducted as part of my PhD research, which is titled Archiving Social Media, a comparative study of the practices, obstacles, and opportunities related to the development of social media archives. And just to provide a little bit of a background on my research, my PhD study focuses on memory institutions that are either currently archiving or planning to archive social media content. And the intent of my PhD research is to capture through interviews the first-hand experience of web archivists and curators in order to understand what has been achieved so far in terms of social media archiving practices, and also identify new challenges posed by the increasing complexity and the constant emerging of new social media platforms. So in my study at the moment, so I have interviewed around 12, 13 web archivists, and currently I'm in the process of analyzing all this data, and potentially I'll try to pinpoint the best practices to finally provide some sort of recommendations based on the latest problems and advancement reached in different institutions that are developing social media archives. So in the last couple of decades, social media has become one of the main ways for people to interact online and to participate in this global ongoing public discussion around contemporary events. And certainly, recent events such as the COVID-19 pandemic or the war in Ukraine, for instance, have made clear what an important source for researchers social media is, a source that is and will be essential to understand, interpret, and contextualize the intricate mosaic that the 21st century is. And although the unique and dynamic nature of social media and other challenges make this material very difficult to capture in a comprehensive way, the memory institutions who are currently or are planning to develop social media archives are steadily growing in number. There have been recent studies that have offered an overview of social media archiving initiatives developed within pre-existing web archiving projects. And also, well, we can assume that most archiving institutions, especially those involved in archiving the web, include to a certain degree social media content in their collections. Not many of them capture social media consistently. So the aim of this presentation of this paper is to offer a review of the latest social media archiving initiatives worldwide, including also institutions such as museums or other organizations involved to different degrees in the preservation of social media content, such as universities, government institutions, and administrative agencies, in order to get a better understanding of the state of the art. Based on the survey results, I will also reflect on some of the imbalances and gaps emerged and the risks that the geographical distribution, this distribution of social media initiatives across the globe may entail for the safeguard of our collective memory. And also, I'll try to highlight the trends that have emerged from the survey and what these may suggest for the future of the preservation of social media at an institutional level. Regarding the survey, the data collection was conducted between October 2021 and February 2022. The survey was circulated mainly via email using mailing lists, such as, just to mention one, the IPC Web Curator mailing list, with the aim of reaching as many institutions as possible that may be archiving or planning to archive social media content. The target population was also completed by sending direct emails to memory institutions that mentioned some sort of social media archiving activities, either on their websites, or on their collection development policies. I also used Twitter to disseminate a bit more the project, the survey, as this is the social media that researchers and web archivists seem to be using the most to communicate about their work and about their research. So in the end, I received a total of 33 responses from institutions at different stages of development of their social media collection. And here is the map that comprises all the countries that in which are located institutions that are either collecting or planning to collect social media content. To those 33 responses, to those 33 institutions, I also added a few more based on desk research, and these are the ones that you can see in yellow in the map. And these are based in countries such as Australia, Sweden, China, Ukraine, and South Korea. As you can see, the map also shows two countries in blue, and these are Italy and Lithuania, which are the two countries in which are based the only two institutions that completed the survey, stating that there are no plan at the moment to archive social media at their institution for different reasons. Of course, the list of social media archiving initiatives and projects out there presented in this study is certainly far from complete. And I'm sure there are many other projects out there that unfortunately this survey wasn't able to actually capture. But I believe that these results still provide an overall indication of the geographical distribution of such initiatives across the globe. And as you can see from the map, the geographical distribution of social media archiving initiatives is mainly located and concentrated in the part of the globe that, from a geopolitical perspective, is called the global north. And in particular, most of these archiving initiatives seem to be located in the European area, in US and Canada. Interestingly, there are some plans to develop a social media archiving, for instance, in Singapore and also in China, where the National Library announced that I think around 2019 that they would start archiving posts from the Sina Weibo platform, which is one of the most popular social media platforms in the country. Another aim of the survey was also to examine the type of memory institutions that are currently involved with social media archiving. And as expected, the majority of the initiatives originate in national libraries and national archives, as it is inherent to their role and mission to preserve the national memory, and especially when content from social media is preserved under national legal deposit regulations. However, among these targeted institutions, a fair amount also came from different areas of the GLAM sector, for instance, museums, and also other institutions such as universities, other government agencies, and there are also archives related to political parties, for instance. These results are particularly significant as they show how the wide usage of social media across different sectors, across different institutions, and the cultural and historical value social media has come to gain in the last couple of decades, has led many different institutions, of course, to include such born digital items in their preservation strategies. In the survey, I also want to capture the stage these social media initiatives were at. So participants were asked to select the response that would would best define their project. They were asked to choose among whether the project was a long-term project, which means a project that is and will be archiving social media for the foreseeable future, so with no limits of time, a pilot fixed-term project, or whether they were still in the planning phase. I thought it was important to capture this information because it would help paint I thought a much clearer image of the current state of the social media archiving panorama, and also would be of help to understand what we could expect to see in the years to come. And as shown in the slide, more than half of the respondents are institutions that are currently working and are currently running long-term projects, while the remainder is distributed between pilot and planning phase. There's one thing to note is that while those are working on pilot fixed-term projects will not always, unfortunately, translate in long-term projects, with no assurance what will happen to the content collected during the trial, especially in terms of like providing access to that content to researchers who might be interested in it. while those in the planning phase appear to be either waiting for instance, for further fundings to start to actually curate the content they might have archived in, like previously, or increase their collection, or for what we can envision to be long-term preservation activities, or are regrouping after previous problematic attempts at archiving social media, and now they're working towards finding the best solutions to actually start archiving consistently social media content again. If we take a look at this next slide, the analysis of the responses capturing the year in which these institutions were started to archiving social media, it seems to paint like an uneven and fluctuating image of the history of social media archiving. And if these data are then placed side by side and compared to what was the following question in the survey, which was related to whether the social media archiving initiatives were actually part of pre-existing web archiving projects, I think, I mean, the image seems to gain a different meaning. Indeed, based on the data collected, so the longest running and well-established initiatives were created between 2007 and 2012, and these appear to be developed as a natural extension of pre-existing web archiving projects. Interestingly, there's this 23% of respondents that declared that their social media archiving initiative has been independently developed or will be developed from independently from any previous web-related initiative of the sort. This result is significant as it seems to reveal a new trend in the development of social media corpora. The reason behind this tendency can be perhaps found in the evolution of social media itself. It appears that even though social media, of course, social media platforms are clearly part of the web, of the internet, these platforms have started to gradually carve out for themselves a well-defined space within the World Wide Web. And also with the diffusion of smartphones and app systems, these have certainly contributed to the evolution of these platforms towards their own direction, and they have indeed become some sort of microcosmos with their own community rules, inherent dynamics, and unique features. So if we consider the increasing awareness around the role played by social media platforms as means of interacting and diffusing information, especially in relation to critical events, as we've seen in the last couple of years, and the cultural value that these platforms have evidently come to hold, it appears that more and more institutions across different sectors have increasingly become interested in preserving content created on social media. And these trends also appear even more significant when linked to the year in which these autonomous social media archiving initiatives have been established or planned to be established, which is indeed around 2017 and 2022. So they're quite recent. It's also interesting how among these autonomous institutions, these autonomous social media archiving initiatives, most of them have just defined themselves as long-term projects and thus created to be run for the foreseeable future. And this further validates the cultural and historical importance associated to these born digital records and the commitment that more and more institutions have to preserve them for the future, for future generations. In the survey, also collected responses related to the type of social media platforms archived, and from data, it emerged what, in a certain sense, has been already reported in previous studies, and which is the tendency for social media archiving initiatives to archive predominantly content from Twitter, followed by Facebook and Instagram. There's a fair amount of institutions also who preserve or plan to preserve material also from other social media, such as WhatsApp and TikTok, which has recently drawn the attention of many institutions, many memory institutions, after becoming very popular around 2020 and 2021. Some other institutions also preserve content from YouTube, Vimeo, Flickr, Tumblr, and Telegram. And especially Telegram is a particular case because it's one of those apps that are not frequently archived yet. But for instance, Telegram has played a central role in the circulation of critical information, especially during the first few months of the war in Ukraine. And indeed, Telegram has become the subject of a recent and very interesting archiving initiative operated by the Center for Urban History in Lviv in Ukraine. So based on the data that I just illustrated, there are some considerations that can be made. First of all, the geographical distribution of social media archiving initiatives reflects those imbalances that are mainly related to economic, political, and ICT divide. But there's one thing that needs to be noted, of course, is that probably the location of social media archiving initiatives, as it has been illustrated in this presentation, may have been affected, for instance, by the dissemination strategies adopted or the language chosen for the survey, which was the English language, which may have, in a certain sense, excluded some institutions, some country where they're not familiar, they're not very familiar with the English language. Furthermore, it is worth noticing how the challenges related to the collection of certain platforms, and just to mention one, Facebook, the maturity of born digital archiving in the US and Europe, and then the national focus of most collections, often shaped by legal deposit regulations, and also the many limitations that social media platforms impose on archiving activities, have affected the type and rate with which social media platforms are currently being archived. And this has led, of course, to the formation of inevitable gaps in the material archived and what researchers will be able to study in now and in the years to come. Besides that, it needs to be taken into consideration also how not all social media platforms are popular in the same way in all countries, while others are only popular and used in specific areas of the globe where they are not archiving social media at the moment, and thus that they have not been captured by this survey. So if we take in consideration these, many of the questions raised about the extent of the excluded platforms and the actual completeness and representativeness of the collection of the collective memory preserved so far, especially in a context such as that of social media, which is highly ephemeral and with a rate of content disappearance around or over the 10% each year. So if we are lucky enough, we will have fragments of this content shared on the less archived platforms or those that are not archived at all from other different sources. But the question remains regarding, for instance, the preservation and representation of silences, marginalized voices, or content produced in areas such as the Global South, which is relevant to study events that transcend the Global North national borders. And this is also why I believe that the emerging of social media archiving initiatives outside legal deposit institutions, outside pre-existing web archiving initiatives might be an important phenomenon to consider, as it could represent an opportunity for these, let's call them outsiders, to actually have the chance to shape collections that could target and keep record of those silences and marginalized histories on social media, especially on those non-mainstream platforms. I would like to conclude by saying that all the previous considerations are a constant reminder of the importance of knowing the extent of the gaps and incompleteness of the corpora historians are and will be able to start to work with. And also, it is a reminder of the importance of documenting the criteria on which selection is based at an institutional level, because it's essential to understand curation choices and to understand what and why some things have been archived rather than others. Findings from the survey also highlighted, of course, the importance of thinking critically about the content archived, what we can expect to find in these important collections, and what still needs to be done in order to try and bridge those geopolitical gaps, and also find new ways to collaborate, to find new solutions that may mitigate the numerous challenges that are preventing social media archiving initiatives to actually grow and thrive as it should. Finally, of course, the survey has demonstrated how, although the number of social media archiving initiatives are still quite few in number, they are steadily growing, especially in response to recent and historically significant events. And the emerging of this new trend of social media archiving initiatives that are flourishing outside institutions that are renowned for their web archiving activities suggests that what started, of course, as an extension of web archiving is becoming and defining itself as a distinct phenomenon with its own challenges, ad hoc solutions, and specific practices, opening to new future scenarios that will be extremely fascinating to investigate further. So here you can find all the references and the bibliography and all the projects that I mentioned. And I would like to add just another thing. If you, looking at the map, if you know of any other project that in the country that has not been highlighted in the map that I just showed you, just let me know, and you can email me at this email address. Thank you.